Next up, Jonathan Verdugo. He's president of the Latino Pre-Law Society. He's from San Diego.
It's like 10 minutes long. Is that fine? Oh, you want it short? Just like if you can make it a little short. That's good. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. How y'all doing today? So first of all, there's two reasons why something like this is personal to me and important to me, and why I'm here today. The first reason is that I was actually a product of the juvenile hall system in San Diego. The first time I was incarcerated, I was 13 years old. I thought I was a bad individual and I deserved to be incarcerated for what I did. And soon after that, I was encompassed in a vicious cycle of drugs, gangs, and incarceration that, I thought I was deserving of. I did the crime and I had to do the time. That was my mindset. And that's how I spent most of my teenage years. I'm actually a 27-year-old undergrad student here preparing to apply to law school this fall. And like Raphael mentioned, I'm also the president of the Latino Pre-Law Society. So you could say I've come quite a ways. And so that's one of the reasons why it's personal to me. My brother, my younger brother's been incarcerated for 10 years of his life. He's younger than me. One of my best friends was just murdered 2 weeks ago. My mom's been incarcerated. My sister's been incarcerated. My stepfather's been incarcerated. Almost everyone I know has been pulled over by police or is on probation or parole. And so that's one of the reasons. The other reason is because I'm a father myself, and I have a 7-year-old son. And it's very difficult trying to tell a 7-year-old why people are stopping traffic on a freeway in the middle of the night because a police officer was not indicted for the murder of an 18-year-old boy who was unarmed. It's hard. How do I tell my 7-year-old son that because of the color of his skin, because of his last name, he will be at an inherent disadvantage for the rest of his life in this country? Educationally, economically, in any which way you want to slice the pie, he's going to be at an inherent disadvantage. So, but his birth, and this is why I'm so grateful to him, his birth actually rescued me from the vicious cycle I was enraptured in. And so I'm very thankful. I became a father at a very young age. And, some people are like, it's, very young. You had a kid at a very young age. But to me, it was truly a blessing. And, people say all the time their kids are blessings. For me, it truly was. It was life or death for me. And he rescued me from that. Because when you grow up in the hood, you're either going to end up in prison, in a coffin, or crazy from all the drugs. Those are the only three paths you'll end up in. And now, so I'll move on to mass incarceration and police brutality. And as I stand before you today, I wish I could look into the eyes of all the parents here who've kids or husbands have fallen victim to police murder. And I wish I could tell you that what happened was a mistake, that it was an anomaly, that it's never going to happen again. I wish I could tell you that their murderers will be brought to justice. I wish I could tell you that you're going to be the last family that's going to suffer through this. But I can't do that because I'd be lying. Just this past month, over 100 people were murdered in America. That's 3 people per day. Just let that sink in for a little bit. The people who are tasked to protect and serve. That's what they're doing with their time right now. Not surprisingly, the majority of those victims were unarmed men of color, and many also suffered from mental health disorders, which is another aspect that doesn't really get addressed. And the murders of James Rivera, O'Shane Evans, and Antonio Guzman Lopez at the hands of the police, like the murders of Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Oscar Grant, are but a microcosm of a national epidemic. They are a representation of a larger issue that encompasses the entire United States. The issue that I'm speaking of is the lack of respect for black and brown lives. Our lives aren't seen as being tantamount to white ones. That is, they're not seen as equal value, having equal value as white lives. We presently live in a society where being black and unarmed, you could be murdered for jaywalking. But being white, armed with an assault rifle, going into a public place, opening fire, you'll still have your day in court. That's how we're living right now. Every 28 hours, a black man is killed in the police. in the US by police. And the question is, how many more lives have to be taken before we stand up as an entire community and demand justice? How many more families have to suffer? How many more young lives are going to be cut short while their murderers get to walk with impunity? And what I want you all to walk away with today is that this is a call to action. This is the call to stand up and fight for our civil rights, to demand equal protection under the law, and to call into question a system that seems hell-bent on destroying our youth. Like police brutality, mass incarceration also hinges on the premise that black and brown lives aren't worthy of salvation. Our youth aren't seen as worthy investments that deserve pro-social programs, and instead the response to poverty, drug abuse, mental health issues, and high dropout rates has been the criminalization of communities of color. So our behavior is criminal because of that. Instead of investing in public education and other social services, we have done the opposite. We've divested from those programs, and we've invested in incarceration. It is rather ironic that the land of the free makes up 25% of the world's inmate population, while only 6% of the world's total population. 1 in 4 people in prison around the world are in America. Consequently, in California, over the past 30 years, 23 prisons were built and 1 university. Out of the 50 states, California has the most expensive per inmate cost at over $48,000 to keep someone incarcerated. Yet, we rank 47th in college investment, which is a little bit over $9,000. That means when it comes to keeping people in prison, we're number 1. But when it comes to supporting them and helping them get educated so that they don't go back to prison, so that they overcome, so that they become contributing members in society, we lag behind 46 other states. That's pretty incredible. But why are these numbers significant? Well, research indicates that being black and uneducated makes you more susceptible to falling victim to incarceration. So, one telling statistic is that 41% of all black male high school dropouts between the age of 22 and 30 were in prison or in jail at mid-year in 1999. So that's almost 50% of all, high school dropouts between the ages of 22 and 30 were more likely to be in prison than anywhere else. And what results from the expansion of prisons is that they need to fill their beds up. Just like universities, prisons also target young adults. But unlike universities, black and brown youth aren't overrepresented black and brown youth are overrepresented in prisons. At UC Berkeley, blacks make up 4% of the total student population, while Hispanics, Latinos, whatever you want to call us, call me Chicano, we make up 14%, respectively. But when it comes to prison populations, those numbers are flipped on their heads. Together, we make up over 70% of all prison inmates in California, and that's not counting the for-profit private prisons where we make up 90%. So why does this matter? It matters because in America, felons make up a lower rung in a new social caste system that the legal scholar Michelle Alexander calls the new Jim Crow. Being a felon in America means that discrimination against you is basically legal. In many states, you're not allowed to vote, you're not allowed to apply for food stamps or public housing or qualify for financial aid if you want to pursue an education. Additionally, most employers will not hire you. This is important because the majority of those arrested between 2006 and 2009 were living at 50% below the poverty line. So the poor are being incarcerated, black, brown, and the poor, regardless of color. This means that not only did you serve time in prison, but you're also being condemned to live a life of poverty. Mass incarceration and police brutality are 2 sides of the same coin. It is time we confront these issues with the same fervor and enthusiasm that the criminal justice system seems to use against us. It is time for us to demand our government representatives bring these issues to the forefront and begin a national discourse on how to deconstruct the legal system that is supposed to be colorblind, yet it seems it's targeting blacks and Latinos at such an alarming rate that if it were our white counterparts, it'd probably be a national crisis. Before I end, I just want to offer you this hypothetical. Imagine a modern-day Germany where police murder Jews every 28 hours. Imagine a Germany where Jews are condemned to death row at much higher rates than other Germans. Imagine a Germany where Jewish boys are more likely to end up in prison than in college. This would be considered an international travesty. Germany would be shamed and shunned by the international community. So why is it okay that despite slavery, despite Jim Crow, despite the KKK, despite redlining and FHA-sponsored discrimination, and despite an entire history where blacks have been oppressed, America gets to get away with this? I say enough. I say it is time we mobilize and rise to the occasion, because if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.